Hi guys, Irina here and welcome back to my channel where I review everything tech. In today's video, let's talk about the Redmi Note 10 Pro or Pro Max, depending on the country you live in. About 3 weeks ago, I did the unboxing video with my first impressions of this phone. Check out this video if you haven't already. But today, let's dive deeper into all the details and nuances when it comes to using this phone. Speaking of the design and size, the Redmi Note 10 Pro is pretty much in the same size range as the latest flagships, the iPhone 12 Pro Max and the Galaxy S21 Ultra. I find the Note 10 Pro really comfortable to hold in my hand. It's quite slim and it's got a good weight to it. It's not too heavy and it's not too light. We have a glass back on this phone and I really like how the finish of this phone looks, especially in onyx gray. Let's talk about the display of this phone. We have a 6.67-inch AMOLED display on the Note 10 Pro. When it comes to brightness, this phone is pretty bright. If I put this phone next to the iPhone 12 Pro Max and the S21 Ultra, in comparison it looks dimmer. But if I put it next to the Google Pixel 4a, which is in the same price range, they look pretty much equal in terms of brightness. So I would say the display of the Redmi Note 10 Pro is bright enough in most situations, especially when it comes to using this phone indoors. Just like on its predecessor, the Note 9 Pro, we get the sunlight mode on this phone, which I cannot say makes a dramatic difference, but still it does make the display look slightly brighter. Also, the good thing is that in the display settings, you could adjust the colors of the display the way you like it. You could choose between auto, saturated, or standard. I prefer the auto mode, but when it comes to color temperature, I always pick warm since it feels more comfortable to my eyes. One of the display features that you get on this phone is the reading mode, which reduces the blue light and makes the colors appear warmer and more comfortable for reading. And also, you could choose the paper mode that adds paper texture to the screen, which is pretty cool, even though I'm not really big on reading on the phone, but sometimes you just have to, so it's a good feature to have. And of course, the most important thing about the new display of the Redmi Note 10 Pro is that now it supports 120Hz refresh rate. By default, it's set to 60Hz on this phone, and you could set it to 120Hz, which makes all the swipes and animations look smoother, but keep in mind that it could drain the battery faster. When it comes to how sharp this display is, I'll be honest with you guys, this is not the sharpest display I've ever got my hands on. Some of the icons look a little blurry, especially if there's a lettering on it, like Asphalt or Call of Duty, but I think the majority of users don't even pay attention to how sharp the icons on their display look, so it shouldn't matter too much. Overall, when it comes to sharpness, this display is not bad. When it comes to using this phone on a daily basis, the photos on Instagram feed look pretty sharp, the videos look great, and I haven't noticed any issues here. As you probably already know, the Redmi Note 10 Pro comes with a pre-installed screen protector, and it's great. But the thing is that mine has already cracked here around the front camera, even though this phone hasn't been dropped once. So I have kind of mixed feelings about it. On the one hand, thanks for the pre-installed screen protector, but on the other hand, why did it crack so fast? Now let's talk about biometrics and security features. We have the face unlock and the fingerprint sensor on this phone, and speaking of the fingerprint reader, I absolutely love that it's located on the power button on the side. I think it's super convenient, especially if you're a righty, so you could easily unlock your phone with your thumb, but if you're a lefty, you can unlock the phone with your index finger, which also feels pretty comfortable. And when it comes to face unlock, it's pretty fast and effortless on this phone. No complaints here. Speaking of the battery, we have a big one here. It's 5020 mAh on this phone, just like on its predecessor, the Redmi Note 9 Pro. One of the most important things for me in any smartphone is the battery life, and I have to admit, this phone is great when it comes to battery life. The Note 10 Pro will easily last you through the day, even if you're a heavy user, and I like that oftentimes I don't even have to charge it daily. However, the thing I really miss on this phone is the wireless charging, since the Redmi Note 10 Pro does not support it. Now let's talk about the camera setup of the Note 10 Pro. We have 4 cameras on this phone, including a 108 megapixel main camera, an 8 megapixel ultra wide camera, a 5 megapixel tele macro camera, and a 2 megapixel depth sensor. In my unboxing video, I already played with some of the new camera features of the Note 10 Pro, and I also tested the mic quality, but in this video I want to talk in more detail about the photos and videos that we usually take on a daily basis in different light conditions. And let's start with some random daylight photos. And let's take a look at some photos taken in very low light conditions. And now let's talk about the videos. As you can see, you get a few options here. You can shoot 1080p videos at 30 and 60 frames per second, but when it comes to 4K videos, you're limited to 30 frames per second. The first thing I've noticed is that the stabilization is not good while shooting in 4K, so I'd rather stick to 1080p on this phone. Besides, when you shoot in 1080p, you also have an option to enable the steady video mode that makes the video look so much smoother. A few more daylight videos for you guys. Let's take a look at some videos shot in very low light conditions. Now let's switch gears and talk about the front camera. We have a 16 megapixel selfie camera on this phone, and let's take a look at some selfies and selfie videos. By the way, the stabilization on the front camera is pretty good on this phone. Now let's talk about the speakers. We have dual speakers on this phone, the in-display speaker and the bottom speaker, and while these are not the loudest speakers on the smartphone, I would say they still feel more than enough for me. The sound quality is very decent on this phone, and I don't think you'll be disappointed. The good thing is that we have a 3.5mm headphone jack on the Redmi Note 10 Pro, which means you're not limited when it comes to what kind of headphones you could use. There is actually a lot to love about this phone, especially when it comes to the features that this phone gives you. One of my favorite things about this phone is the always-on display, because the variety of watch faces and customizations you get here is pretty much endless, and I love it. By the way, I really like the new control center. I think it looks so much better than the default one, and the good thing is that with the software update you get it on the previous models as well. When it comes to special features, one of my favorites is the video toolbox that lets you open other apps while you're watching videos, so you could do some multitasking, which is really helpful. And also, the game turbo is pretty cool. You get some in-game shortcuts, you could do the screen recording, take a screenshot, clear cache, and open other apps while you're playing. When it comes to the internals of this phone, the Redmi Note 10 Pro runs on Snapdragon 732G. You can get this phone with either 6 or 8 GB of RAM and up to 128 GB of expandable storage. When it comes to how fast this phone is, I cannot say this is the fastest phone I've ever used, but it's still pretty good for a daily driver. It's quite zippy. Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, you won't have any problems with those apps. Everything just feels really fast. And when it comes to gaming, some games like Subway Surf will feel really smooth on this phone, but when it comes to more demanding games such as the Asphalt, you can see some slight freezes, but they're pretty subtle, so it won't ruin your whole gaming experience. And speaking of freezes and glitches, I've recently experienced a camera error, but so far it's only happened once. The Redmi Note 10 Pro is IP53 certified, which means this phone is protected from dust and it's splash resistant, but it's not completely sealed from solids and it's not completely waterproof. And speaking of some limitations of this phone, the Redmi Note 10 Pro does not support 5G, but I personally don't think that it's a big deal since the 5G network is still developing. The starting price for this phone is $279, and it's pretty amazing that for this money you get plenty of features, a pretty decent camera setup, and an amazing battery life. That's all for this review, guys. Let me know what you think about the Redmi Note 10 Pro and if you're gonna upgrade to this phone. Thank you so much for watching and see you in the next video.